Hey, welcome everybody to this annual meeting. This is the ultimate bit of excitement here when you're talking sewers. We're gonna go ahead and get going, and then we'll do introductions as we go along here. So, but the very first thing we have on our schedule here is we'll do our invocation and pledge, once again led by Mr. Mulder.
Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you in prayer once more. We know that we can never pray enough. We know that we can never ask for your guidance enough. We ought to pray more. We ought to feel your love more. We ought to feel your guidance. We ask you to continue to provide that to us as we go through this meeting and we go through the rest of our day and the rest of our week and the rest of our year. We know this is a new year. It's a time to start over. So we come to you asking for you to continue to guide us this year and make those right decisions for our community. We also, once again, ask that anybody who's feeling sick, Mr. Graham, who we just heard about is facing an ailment of some kind, we just ask that you continue to watch over them and be at their bedside and be by their shoulder and just help them in any way you can. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Oh yeah, we have a flag.
We have a flag. We have a half a flag. If you want to lean down, you can see it all. There we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, before Chris gets started, we'll do an introduction of everyone. If I don't know you, my name is Bob Ferris. I represent Seneca, been their Light Water Director for a few years now, and I'm serving because Kevin is not here. You record this. Haven't shared this meeting, so anyway, that's who I am, Scott. We'll do the board and then we'll get everybody else.
Thank you, Bob. Scott Mulder, City of Seneca, represented on the board for, I guess, almost 6.5 years now, and been with them for that same period of time. So welcome, glad to have you.
Scott McLean, I represent the City of Seneca. I'm the engineering superintendent of Light and Water. I've been on the board around 5 years now. Thank you for being here.
David Dahl, seat 9, Westminster and Walhalla. Been on the board now 2 or 3 years.
Larry Hinkle, City of Walhalla, Utilities Director. I'll be taking in seat 6, and I'm new on the board.
Very good. Well, you want to introduce yourself?
Me?
I'm Larry Brown, I'm the attorney for the sewer commissioner. I've been hanging around here since 2014.
I'm Lynn Stevens. I'm the board secretary, treasurer, and also the office manager for the OGRSA.
Very good.
I'm Scott Ferris, I'm the Utilities Director for the City of Westminster, and I'm back on the board now and have been on it almost 23 years. Long time.
It was a long time. Enjoyed every minute of it.
Every minute.
Oh, Sue is in the back? Okay, you're getting the board members first.
Yeah, we moved with the spring. Sylvia Meyer, City Administrator for the City of Walhalla, channeling Inner Baptist and Salvation Back Road once presentation starts.
Very good. We'll just keep going back there.
Okay. I'm Tim Hall, Mayor of Walhalla.
Brian Ramey, Mayor of Westminster.
Tommy James, oncoming County Council District 4.
Greg King, Walhalla Councilman.
Glenn Hart, Oconee County District 5.
Matt Durham, County Council District 2.
Riley Morningstar, Blue Ridge Electric Cooperative.
Kelly the Journal.
Monroe citizen.
And Marshall citizen.
Very good.
Davy Stockton, City of Westminster.
Is that everybody? Well, welcome. You know, and we'll turn this over to Mr. Chris Eliezer. Everybody, if you hadn't had a chance to meet Chris, you know, feel free to do so and hang around afterwards. But Chris, hand this over to you.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm Chris Eliezer. I'm the Executive Director of the Oconee Joint Regional Sewer Authority. And I've been in this position now since May of 2017, I believe. So in putting this together, about once a year thing I have to do, it's hard to do something different every time. So you probably have seen most of what I'm going to show you before. Some of the orders have changed with some of it. But there's 2 or 3 things on here that are brand new or have progressed fairly far along from when we had this same meeting about a year ago from now. So in changing the normal order that I do things, I figured I'd go ahead and do this one first. I'll talk about Sewer South. So first and foremost, it's now complete. Phase 2 of that project, we had the permit to operate from the South Carolina Department of Environmental Services. We received it just before Christmas, and we'll be reaching out to potential users sometime at, probably later on this week, maybe as soon as tomorrow, especially for some commercial applicants that may be interested and have expressed an interest in tying on. That being said, we've got County Council representation here. We desperately need flow, so I know you want the flow too, and you guys have done wonders with getting this thing and making it happen. And Mr. Hart, I will call attention to you, and I hope this doesn't embarrass you by putting you on the spot. But this, in the 5 years or so I've been working on this, it seems like it's been longer than that. But this project wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Mr. Hart and his knowledge and working with the people down there. He was able to communicate with people that we didn't know how to get hold of. He was able to speak to people that make them or help them to understand what we were trying to do. So, he gets a tremendous amount of my appreciation and credit for not just the project itself, but the construction of the project and making this thing come through. So, as I stated, we need flow. The next part of this slide is going to show you what we need to make this a viable wastewater system so that we're not going to have operational issues with it. So, as you can see in those bold highlighted areas, for the exits 1 and 2, for those the two pump stations that serve that general area, we need about 315,000 gallons per day. And then for Golden Corner, we need that flow plus about an additional 590 to 600,000 gallons per day. And the reason why I bring this up is it is something that we discussed at the meeting that we had prior to this in a compliance update, is wastewater, you can have the generation of what is called hydrogen sulfide. And a lot of you probably heard that term before, but it is, you probably have smelled the odor. If anything, you've got it's a very, you think of like wastewater, septic tanks, you think of just stale, nasty smell. That's what you're typically going to be smelling, that methane gas. But the hydrogen sulfide for us is of some severe concern because not only is it detectable to the nose at very, very low concentrations into the parts per billion that generates odor complaints, but it also, at higher concentrations, can lead to degradation of concrete and metal. So there's, we need to keep, if you want to call it, quote unquote, fresh wastewater in the system. These are some of the numbers that we need to have based on what the consulting engineer that is doing an evaluation for that area estimated back several months ago. very likely that we're gonna have to introduce some type of a pre-treatment on this system at either Golden Corner and or exits 1 or 2 to introduce either a bleach type agent or some other type of engineered solution to prevent the creation of the hydrogen sulfide gas. The next slide, and this is one that I showed last year. This is just an overall site map of phase 2 of the project. So I don't know if this is going to work or not. Let's see. So up here, this little red and black box up here, that's the existing Golden Corner Commerce Park pump station. That station is, 1.3, 1.5 million gallons a day, if I remember correctly, based on best practices for operating a system. The green line coming from that station to what I'll call the heart of the Fairplay Village is a gravity sewer line. And those of you that have been down there, you know that from the top of this hill up in front of Yoder's down to Golden Corner is a pretty steep drop in elevation. Great for gravity sewer. So we have a large diameter line there that's going to be capable of serving that area for a long time. The red, as we move away from that to this box here, that's the Broomway Lane pump station. The red line indicates a force main or a pressurized pipe. So think of like a drinking water line or a line up underneath your house that sends clean water. That's what it is acting like. Gravity sewers allow flow in. Force mains, pressurized, think of it forcing the flow out. The pipe itself is what contains the flow to keep it within. Going to the Broomway Lane pump station is a fairly short gravity sewer that goes up underneath highway or Interstate 185, but Interstate 85, right there at exit 2, and connecting to that, coming down under Lake Hartwell, right in this general area here, over to the Welcome Center is the Welcome Center pump station, which is the top of this system. So the flow, if you're looking at it from the top to Golden Corner, it's going to flow this general direction that I show here, and then on to the treatment plant, which is near Seneca High School. I've got a few photographs. These are going to be some mixed photos of some things we have going on over the last year. This image here was taken last month. That is the finished Welcome Center pump station. It will be eliminating a treatment plant that served the Welcome Center for decades down that way. So that's going to be our first customer. All we have to do, they just need to go and apply for service at Pioneer Water, so that Pioneer will start billing them for sewer. And then our contractor that installed the project, from what I understand, part of that scope of the work for them is to essentially divert the flow from the treatment plant directly into that facility there. Moving in this direction here, this is the Broomway Lane pump station, the middle one between the Welcome Center and Golden Corner. That's the one that's going to be at near exit 2. Up here that's a 10-inch HD, I don't think it's HDPE, I think it's fusible PVC pipe. So what you see here is entering the ground, and this pipe is actually being pulled about 50 feet under the bottom of Lake Hartwell and arriving somewhere on the other side of the lake. It is physically pulled under through a directional drill technique where they do not have to do any digging or excavation for that. Over here is ultimately where this is going to go. This was done in springtime, I believe, of 2024, and that is the force main easement along I-85. Now, the rest of these are on the existing system that we have now. So this, we have begun inspecting fats, oils, and grease locations, most of which are going to be your restaurants. That was a new requirement that we had put upon us back a couple of years ago by what was then the Department of Health and Environmental Control, or DHEC. Now they are the Department of Environmental Services. They stated that we had to update our sewer use regulation as part of our consent order, and that we need to begin enforcing our regulations. So, this shows a grease interceptor that is at the point where it needs to be cleaned out because it's going to be spilling grease and oil into the sewer system, which leads to clogs and problems and potential overflows in the public part of the system. Over here, those of you who may not know, there's a technique where you can take a camera, and the camera's on tracks or on wheels, and they can place it into a sewer, and it'll crawl along the bottom of the pipe. This is what the inside of a gravity sewer line looks like. You can see the water line here, but what you see here is part of a PVC pipe that has come disconnected or unconnected from a ductile iron pipe. This thing that looks like one of these mines that you would see in like a World War II movie is turned off, but it is used as a jetter. It sprays high pressure water and is pulled through the line to clean it, and you'll see the camera will go and it'll follow the jetter as it moves through. Well, when they came across this disconnected line, they stopped it so they could get a better idea of what they were encountering there. This pipe goes directly under Highway 123 up near Davis Creek Road. Is it TDC? What's the Greenfield? The name of the company that's up there is underneath that highway. So we identified this. This was just a couple of months ago that we found this as part of our CCTV and clean work that we were doing, looking for defects, and this was by far the worst that we found. It is not deemed an emergency. Who knows how long it's been like that, but it's going to be something that's going to be on our list that we're going to need to go and fix. Now, it could be a challenge to go and fix this. I believe it's encased, so it may be possible to pull pipe through it to make the repair, but that's just an example of one of the things we encountered when we were out doing some inspection work. A couple more photos here. Hurricane Helene. These pictures are taken pretty close to each other. This is the bridge and this is the guardrail just on the other side of the bridge. But what you see here, right there, is a manhole. And if you can see it up close, you can tell it's bubbling up. You can kind of see the disturbance of the water around the manhole. This is that exact same manhole 24 hours later. So we had that much flooding from the storm, and it overtopped that manhole by 3 or 4 inches, I believe. But in my time here, we have seen flooding like this. I can think of 4, 5, or 6 occasions on Conross Creek. But it's to the point now where the DES, I'll probably slip up and call them DHEC, but the same agency, DES has said that we need to consider that when we're doing rehab, because what's happening when we get something like this going on, this is after we turned the plant off. We shut the plant down during Hurricane Helene because we had no more room to store flow. We were treating it as fast as we could, and we were storing about 12 million gallons of it or more on site, and we couldn't take any more. So we just turned all the pumps at the facility down and all the pumps out in the collection system down. So we've been asked that we take a look at making these facilities either watertight or raising them up. And raising them up from the operational side is the better of the two options, because a sewer, it needs to be able to breathe, it needs to have air coming in it to not pull a vacuum, because a gravity sewer is not meant to operate under pressure. Replacement of a the point repair of a line that we came across several years ago that was in a field that was part of our initial consent order work that had to be done. Department of Environmental Services, that's their new logo, took the place of DHEC when they split on July 1. And then a project that's been in the works for a number of years, which is the old Flat Rock pump station that we had some major problems with that was part of our consent order. Has been finally replaced and put in operation, which is what we call the new Duck Pond pump station. And then in this very same room, back last spring, we had one of our 3 public meetings for our 20-year master plan, public participation, trying to get input from the public to find out what they wanted, not just us to be, but what they envisioned for where they wanted sewer in the county, and equally as important, where they didn't want to have sewer. So Catherine Amadon and the folks with Weston and Sampson led that effort. Usually the slides that I start with are the compliance slides. And as always, safety. I won't go into a lot of the numbers here, but we had another really good year as far as safety goes. No lost time accidents. I don't think we had any injuries of any kind that I can think of at work over the last 12 months. We had no OSHA inspections, and thus no OSHA violations. And we did hold and host a flagger training that was done in conjunction with South Carolina Rural Water. Will be invited other utilities to come and participate in that with us. The conveyance system, some places they may call it the collection system, but what this is it has to do with the pipes and pump stations that are out in the system that bring the wastewater to the treatment plant. So you'll hear conveyance or collection, but they're both pipelines and pumps. So this 2021 consent order that we entered into back in May of 21, that's still in effect. And to be quite honest with you, I don't know that I'll see the end of that before I retire. I think this is a multi-year endeavor. It's going to be a long event, because we've got to go through our entire system, rehab it to the point where we satisfy DES to where they would release us from the conditions of that consent order, which means a tremendous amount of inflow and infiltration reduction. Last year we had 17 known spills that we did document, totaling about 5.4 million gallons. But as you can see, the bulk of those spills, and the gallons associated with those spills, had to do with the hurricane when we had to shut the pump stations down, and the treatment plant for that matter. A significant spill, while I differentiate that one, is because significant spills is what gets you into a consent order. The state, they've got a law, it's called informally called the 3 strikes law. And for every 100 miles of pipe that you have in your system, you're allowed 2 significant spills, a spill over 5,000 gallons, and there's some other criteria as well. Well, with us, we don't have 100 miles of pipe in the system. So really, once we hit 2 spills, we're going to be, it's prorated, so we're going to be at that significant spill area. We're already under consent order. DHEC or DES is satisfied with the progress we're making, but still, as part of our order, we have to report every significant spill as part of our biannual report that we provide to the agency. 13 reportable spills, 10 weather-related, and we had 2 more spills on the Speeds Creek pump station force main, which is a total now, I think, of 14 that we've had there since 2016, and that is a line that is part of our consent order that we have to address as well, and we've got a plan for it. Now we just have to find the funding. The treatment plant, what we call the water reclamation facility, we had an inspection in March of 24, not a single deficiency noted. And I put on there that their inspection is 12 pages long. Very thorough inspection. And I think it may be the second consecutive that we've had where we've had absolutely no deficiencies noted. We currently are waiting on DES to issue us a new NPDES permit, which is the permit that allows us to discharge into the environment the treated effluent from the plant. We continue to operate off of an expired permit, which is allowed as DES tries to go through and update our existing. They've got all of our information. We've provided it to them in accordance with the time parameters. We're just waiting on them. We don't know exactly if there's going to be any additional requirements of us to monitor coming forward. We do know and have been told that everybody, I think most everybody here has probably heard of these microplastics, or PFAS, PFOA, contaminants of emerging concerns. There's all kinds of names that you hear about. We've been told that there's probably going to be a placeholder for that in the permit going forward. We've already been asked to do some preliminary sampling of what's coming into the plant to find that out, but I think right now the biggest focus with the microplastics has been on the drinking water side of things, where there's going to be a direct impact with human health. And from what I understand, that we're good in this area of the state up here as far as those go. So with most of that water going into the wastewater plant, we're hoping to be okay with that too. We're also looking to eliminate chlorine gas for our disinfection system, and we've been waiting on this for about a year now, waiting on the construction permit to convert to a peracetic acid from the chlorine.
Chris, what's the benefit of that?
The peracetic acid?
Yeah.
We get out from under all of the reporting requirements for the EPA and for OSHA. So right now we have to generate, in fact I got an email from the EPA, I think it was today you forwarded it to us. Was it today or was it one day last week, for the risk management plan? So we've got to generate have a consultant come in. They've got to do air modeling to look at what the impact downstream would be for this. If we have a chlorine gas release, how that plume is going to move, how many people are going to be affected by it. I'm going to go back. This picture here shows you what, this is Oconee County's hazmat team and Seneca Fire Department during a drill at our plant last year. This is what they have to suit up with for the chlorine gas during a live event. That's what they would have to do. Decontaminate. You're going to probably, you're going to have the whole Graniteville train wreck that you had about 20 years ago. That's what we're trying to prevent. But we've got to go through all the documentation and reports to protect our employees and protect those outside of the gates of the plant as well.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Pre-treatment. We had our first pre-treatment audit in, I believe, 11, 12, 13 years. And it was satisfactory with no deficiencies noted. So Allison McCullough, wave to her on the camera if she's watching, she's done a great job with that program. And I put on here, you saw, was it 12 pages for the treatment plant inspection? For Allison's inspection, it was a 34-page audit. So nearly 3 times as long. And what pre-treatment is, I talked about it a few moments ago with the fats, oils, and grease for restaurants. But what most people think of with the pre-treatment program is with industrial users. So many, if not most, industrial users will have to, they may be required to have some pre-treatment on their system to treat and remove pollutants in their wastewater that our biological plant is not set up to remove and cannot be. I can't think of a single plant that you have in the state of South Carolina that's a publicly owned treatment works that is set to remove pollutants from manufacturing processes or industrial processes. So they put that burden on the industries themselves to do that. That's what Allison oversees. 19 significant users that have a permit for us that monitor 326 different pollutants across all those permitted systems. And they've had nearly a perfect compliance rate. 99.8 is I would call that stellar. I really would. We've issued no consent orders over the last 12 months to any of the industries. we've got one non-significant source of that we have a consent order to issue against to correct issues with that, and it has to do with solids that are coming into the system up in the Walhalla area, and we're having to remove those. We're having them put in a pre-treatment device to keep those out of the system because there's been numerous issues with our pump station as well as the gravity sewer upstream of there that has caused overflows in the past. And that, again, all facilities fall under pre-treatment, so we're working with the restaurants to try to help out in that regard with that new program. Laboratory, no inspections. We've outsourced a lot of that. Stormwater, we've had no inspection from DES on that either, but that's one of these things, as it rains, you have to go out and continuously make improvements. You gotta spray and remove weeds, clean out pipes, silt and sediment out of pipes on our site. Now on to the consent order specifically. I won't go into this too much because this is probably the third or fourth year I've talked about it. But everybody I think knows we're under a consent order. And a consent order means we have agreed with, at that time, DHEC, to take corrective action. That we were willing to work out an agreement with them and have input into the action that we take along with the timetable instead of just an administrative order or a direct mandate that you would get from the state. We were able to do some negotiation with that. So the state has been pleased with the progress that we've made. I do believe they do see that we're continuing to make headway into reducing influent infiltration, which is the biggest issue that we've had, along with that flat rock pump station that we have replaced. This goes to show you some of the significant progress that we have made. I'm not going to read these out, but I will put, probably tomorrow, I'll put a copy of this presentation on our website, on the homepage. Just scroll down to the bottom, and I'll have it where you can look at a PDF of this presentation and read this if you wish. Some anticipated projects that we have. Just really, one of these is one that I want to talk about, and that has to do with the big SCIP project that we have. And SCIP is the ARPA money, the federal money that came out from the federal government to help with infrastructure, be it water, wastewater, broadband. Is roads part of that? I'm not sure. We don't do roads and transportation, but it may or may not be. I don't know. But what the state received a large sum of money, and there was a competitive grant process that was put in place. We applied for funding, and we received, nearly $10 million in grants. We had to make some provide matching funds for it, but we received it. So one of the big projects that we have, which is about a little over a $4 million project, is doing a rehab of a considerable part of our system. And the biggest focus that we have at this time with this project serves, I think, mainly the southern part of the city of Westminster. The city's got their own pipes that bring it to ours. We're focusing on ours. I know the city is working on some corrective issues on yours. I believe you guys have SCIP funding, don't you, Mr. Ferris? So, I think all the cities have received funding to work to combat inflow and infiltration. So again, I won't go into this much. Just know that we're continuing to work and make headway with the consent order. Next, our flows. Won't touch on this long, but you can just see here that if you can kind of draw a straight line, and these are the actual flows that we receive, average 1 million gallons per day that we receive at the treatment plant. Going back to 1982, we're still, roughly receiving about the same amount of flow, even though we have seen growth. This orange line here, yellowish orange, shows that's what DHEC says we have for our treatment plant. So our treatment plant has to be sized based on that Tennessee orange colored line. That's what has been permitted for us to receive. But in reality, the numbers that they use, DHEC, DES uses, are very conservative. So they say an average home uses 300 gallons per day. What we actually see is the average home uses 150 gallons per day or less. Now, whether it's through conservation measures, by better fixtures in the house to reduce water consumption, or what it is, it's substantially less than what they show. But the issue comes when this line here approaches this dashed red line. When this line gets to near that dashed red line, that's when we have to begin having plans for an upgrade to upsize our facility, which has been incorporated into the 20-year master plan. So the green line on the bottom, that's our average industrial flow, and this is part of that blue line. The blue line accounts for rainwater that we get into the system, dry weather flow, everything that you could think of. User rates, I know the cities and the customers are interested in what the rates are, but we have continued to use the same rates this year as we have last year, when we changed our rate model structure, where instead of billing the cities based on a percentage of flow that they contributed to the overall flow that we received at the plant, which was called the pro rata share model, we have now gone to a billing model much like, well, exactly like water uses. You use 5,000 gallons a month of water at your house and you're on sewer, you're going to be billed for 5,000 gallons of wastewater treatment as well. So it's a better way to do it. We're still having to treat the influent infiltration, but it's not penalizing cities based on items that are outside of their control, such as leaks and infiltration matters that occur on our pipes that affect that overall percentage. And it seems that I think the cities, the administration seems to be satisfied with how that's worked. I know I have been tremendously satisfied with it. We, as part of our feasibility study, and there'll be talk about this in a little bit, we are having to do a rate and cost of service assessment, and that is in the initial phases of that. So I think that the plan for that is for it to be presented by the financial rate consultant at our March board meeting, which will be at our facility on Return Church Road. So again, sometime in March, we'll hope to have some idea about what the rates could be. And I think it's going to be somewhat of an adjustable, kind of like if you do this, how does it affect that type of a thing, so that the board has the options to play around with it to see, what kind of rate they would be happy with as far as funding what we need to do moving forward. The 20-year master plan. This was completed in mid-2024 and presented, I believe, in this same room in July of last year. And as you see on here, this plan was extremely thorough. It looked at population growth, the current projected land use, the condition of our current infrastructure, pipeline expansion for new growth, the discharge permit parameters, and receiving water body. So what that is how much treatment, or what type of a treatment plant, or the extent, how extensive a treatment plant may need to be able to discharge into any given body of water, so Lake Hartwell, whatever a stream may be, and then the possibility of having additional treatment plants. The result regarding, or to answer the question about the possibility of additional treatment plants, the recommendation, and this was for the county as a whole, was not to have any new treatment plants, to continue to use the one we have now and expand it a couple of times over the next 20 years to meet the needs. And I believe that the initial expansion was to get it up to right around 11 million gallons a day, which is up from our current 7.8 million gallons a day. And then right there at the end, getting close to the end of that 20-year period, so 2042, 43, 44, would be to begin the expansion to get it to about 13 or so million gallons per day. And a copy of that master plan is available on our website as a PDF, and you can download it. I've got a stack of stuff on this table over here, and the bottom book, there's two books that are stacked on top of one another. The bottom of those two books is the 20-year master plan. So it's got maps, it's got figures coming out of its ears for you to look over. The next slide is the one where we, I think, have to kind of decide where we want to go. And just keep in mind, this 20-year master plan is only for the Oconee Joint Regional Sewer Authority. It's not looking at what the cities need to do. It's not looking necessarily at the county's expansion down along the interstate, although it takes that into account from what we did a couple of years ago with that master plan. It continues to include that, but it does not expand it, those little spiders webs off of the trunk line. It didn't go beyond what y'all saw a couple of years ago. So for the OGRSA, that 20-year master plan plus rehabilitating our existing system, they estimate if we did everything that's on there, at about $304 million in 2024 dollars. So how realistic is that? We don't know. We know we've got to bite off a pretty good chunk of it because some of that has to go to rehab in our existing facilities, be it the treatment plant, the pipelines. Some of it is for line extensions that we may or may not ever need. Those can be cut possibly. But some of it is for lines that need to be replaced, but that also need to be upsized to accommodate for future growth. We've got a number of those areas in the system as well. And again, that doesn't take into account anything with the cities within their own system or expanding beyond what they currently have. The number of permits, user permits that we've issued over the last year, this kind of tracks what you can see with that. And these blue lines, the taller lines, they are residential permits. So your subdivisions, your maybe like a one-off house, somebody's gonna build, on a street where there's already sewer, but it's not part of the subdivision, those would get grouped in there. So about 308 residential lots we permitted for sewer last year. And most all of those are in subdivisions, the same as the year before, and probably the year before, and the year before that. You can see the orange-ish, yellowish orange colors. Those are the numbers of non-residential permits that we've issued. So it may be an industrial site, or it may be an apartment complex. We consider apartment complexes to be non-residential because they use a single meter for the entire facility, for the entire building. So they're typically with those type of places, is not a conservation effort. If a tenant's got a running faucet, a leaky faucet, they're not as inclined to go and repair it if they're not having to pay the water bill. But, so you may have, and I think we had one multifamily unit that we permitted last year, but again, multifamily, unless they got individual water meters for each unit, we consider them residential then, but we treat those as a non-residential user. This slide here, I won't talk about it much, but it goes into the number of requests, specific requests that I received for parcels across Oconee County and even part of Anderson County near exit 4 up to exit 11 regarding is sewer available at that site. And these are just a number of requests that have come to me. So some of these, the cities may get calls that don't get to me, or we may get calls, Ms. Stevens or Ms. Amanda Kelly, who answers a lot of phone calls for us. They may get calls asking about sewer availability, but if it doesn't come to me, I don't document them. There's a larger copy, a paper copy of this map that's sitting on this front table that would be easier for you to see, and it's just a heat map. So the more yellow or red the color, the more requests we've had for those areas. So this was for last year. Now on to this regional sewer feasibility study. How long ago was this, Bob? Maybe 2022. We got a call to go meet with Bonnie Ammons with South Carolina Rural Infrastructure Authority, which is a state agency, and they're one of the ones that issues most, if not all, oversees most, if not all, water infrastructure grants in the state, or a considerable number of them anyways. And we went down there and they presented us with an opportunity to conduct a study to determine what would be some of the possible mechanisms for having water or wastewater service in Oconee County. So they stated they had a $100,000 grant to perform this study, and we applied for it and received it and conducted the study. So the study was presented back, I believe it was in August, to the board, and the board adopted it at the September meeting to move forward with the next steps. So what it evaluated, the governance structures for us, as well as the cities in Oconee County, revenues and finances regarding wastewater treatment and collection services, environmental compliance, utility resources, and efficiencies in operation. I have us as a system owner because we were the ones that applied for the study. The study was done for us, but it also evaluated the key stakeholders that I have listed here: Seneca, Walhalla, Westminster, Oconee County, and the town of West Union. They were all heavily involved in the process. The findings of this, they identified 2 recommendations, but the first of those had 2 options to it. So I'll go into here. I'm going to go through the 2 options first. So it's either one or the other. The first one is to complete a revision of the current Oconee Joint Regional Sewer Authority intermunicipal agreement. So basically just keeping the system that we have now under the Joint Authority Water and Sewer Systems Act, but reorganizing to take into account the needs of the cities that we serve currently, plus Oconee County. So there's a recommendation for Oconee County to have a seat at the table with this. Within there, there's 8 sub-recommendations. Those are on another slide that I have. Option 2, or with this, was essentially to, I don't know that I want to say give ourselves away, but allow somebody else to come and take over our system, another interested multi-county utility organization, which you see, in other areas of the state. So we pick one of those 2 and consider consolidation of the wastewater collection systems that we currently have within the county. So those were all the recommendations for consideration. So what was done was they recommended creating an ad hoc committee, which has been put together, and we've had our first meeting in December. We're going to have our second meeting on Thursday of this week. But these are what we're tasked with if we stay as we are and have a way to stay self-governing and not have somebody else come and take over the operation. So change the board structure, and this one would again allow a representative from Oconee County on the board. Have a different voting mechanism in place, establish debt approval policies, triggering actions and process for adding new members. And again, I didn't say it, but we currently have a 9-member board. Their recommendation was to go down to a 5-member board. Establish procedures and processes for the sewer authority to get into the retail business and to possibly provide retail businesses for other systems that exist now if they elect to get out of provide retail sewer. Rate structure, create an equitable rate structure. How is growth going to be funded, and how will that, who will be serving and providing the infrastructure for that growth, and then the term, the length of the new agreement, establish what that would be. The study also came with tight recommendations for a timeline. And again, this was given to the state approved it, and they said go forward with it. So the sewer authority has 5 actions that we had to take. We had to adopt the study, we had to establish that ad hoc committee, we have to receive legal opinions on the 2 options, whether we reorganize or somebody takes us over, complete that financial and cost of service study, and then to present the findings and recommendations and next steps to the OJRSA board and Oconee County. The cities and the county were also tasked and recommended to undertake 2 action items. One was to complete an individual sewer collection system capital improvement plan, and the second was for them to perform a financial and rate study that incorporated each of their cities' CIPs in along with the sewer authority's study that we're having to be performed, or that we're having performed right now. When we submitted that study to the state back in, I believe it was September, we received a letter back after they went through and reviewed all of our grant documents and found that everything was in compliance. We received this letter back, and I highlighted a couple of statements in here. Can you guys read that, or do you need me to read it? So the statement that they have in there, and this is the letter we got from Rural Infrastructure Authority, the highlighted part says, the participating sewer systems include Oconee County, City of Seneca, City of Walhalla, City of Westminster, and Town of West Union. Then you go down a couple of paragraphs, and then it says at the bottom, the efforts to act on the recommendations and reorganization efforts outlined in this plan may be a consideration in, I can't even read it, it's so small. In evaluations of future funding requests for OJRSA and the participating members. So it doesn't say there's guarantees for assistance with this, but they put it out there that it's a consideration for sure that, by playing, by participating, there's a possibility for additional funding mechanisms and opportunities. Getting near the end, my annual request for the satellite sewer systems. 1, participate in the regional feasibility study. So there's a corrective action plan. As I mentioned earlier, the DES required us to begin enforcing our sewer use regulation. So as part of that, we developed a corrective action plan request for each of the cities for them to address inflow and infiltration upstream of us. So we're, I guess, 2 or 3 years ahead of where they are, of the cities and assessing it, because that consent order was hit with us first, and we wanted to identify where we thought our hot spots were so we could begin addressing those before we begin asking the cities to begin looking at I&I on their systems. Also, to continue, seeking I&I sources and take appropriate corrective actions, budgeting for future repairs and growth, gathering GPS and GIS information for mapping, hydraulic modeling, and asset management purposes. And I'll have more information that we'll send out by email to the cities about that sometime soon. We're improving the map and trying to improve our hydraulic modeling, not just for us, but what we're able to do for the cities as well. Assist us with enforcing sewer use regulation, seek ways to eliminate the hydrogen sulfide gas that I mentioned earlier, and this hadn't been any issues of late, but just continue to refrain from pushing debris into our lines when doing preventive maintenance and cleaning on the city's lines. And then finally, the completing part, the CIP for the feasibility study, and is also stated in the corrective action plan. Annual reviews, we have to provide a review to DES every May and November. And as part of that, now that we've brought in the cities into it with corrective action plans, we're going to include that with our report to them as well. So those will be due to us April 30th and October 31st, and I think Allison McCullough has sent out a template to the cities for them to use to provide those updates to us by those dates each year, and that'll be until the consent order is closed. And then complete the financial rate and cost of service study that was identified in that feasibility study that was mentioned a few moments ago. Now, Mr. Royer, I told you that you guys made my presentation this time, so usual request every year is to take a tour. Well, we had a group come take a tour, and y'all had a board meeting in our boardroom back, when was that? October, I believe? No, it was September. It was not long before Helene hit.
Yeah.
So this is their group. They came and brought in lunch and went through the plan. I think the feedback that you guys got, that we got from it was good. Hopefully that everybody got a lot out of it. We invite everybody every year. Please come take a look and see what we do. And then lastly, questions, comments, and closings. Now, I told somebody a little while ago that, I think it was you, Riley, wasn't it? My daughter, when she was young, she was in my wife's classroom. My wife's a teacher at Ravenel. And she wrote on the whiteboard, "Strive for progress, not perfection," or how she thought perfection should be spelled. Well, I thought that's a perfect thing for you can't get any better than that. That's all we want to do here is we want to continue to progress, continue to get better, and I don't know a better way to say it than to strive for progress, not perfection. So with that, any questions, comments? I'll ask our voluntary board chair. He's fair game today. Anything anybody wants to know, ask? Yes, sir.
You put up numbers for the needed flows into phase 2. Particularly, I don't remember what the number was from the I guess my question is, do you know you're going to get those flows?
We don't. All we can do is encourage flow. And you know what?
How about from the Welcome Center? Do you know?
I believe they have a treatment plant, and it's either rated at, it's around 20 to 25 million gallons per day, I believe. Is not that much. I'm sorry, 1,000 gallons per day. Thank you. And so but I don't think it typically uses that much. So whatever we get from them, that 15,000 on average per day, that's what we know we're going to be getting now. Everything else is kind of up in the air.
But your number was like 385,000, if I remember right.
Yeah, about 314,000 for exits 1 and 2. And the reason why that is, again, I mentioned about the hydrogen sulfide. You can see these red pipes there. Those are those pressurized pipes that nobody can connect to. That are going to be the areas where you're going to have the creation of the bulk of that hydrogen sulfide gas within those pipes. Those are long runs of pipe. It doesn't even show the 10 miles or so that's going from Golden Corner up to the treatment plant. We don't know yet what we don't know we're going to be experiencing up there. So those numbers that we have in there are from an engineer based on best design practices and operating practices for turning over that force main. So what he stated is, it may be marginal, he said, to try to get it to turn over 6 times per day. And if we can do that, we might be okay without having to have some type of a chemical feed or any other type of mechanism that we would have to introduce. The flow would be enough to address that on its own. But, you know, I think optimally it would be, and I said days, I think it's hours of retention time. So right now, he would want, you know, 6 hours of retention time, 5 hours, but I think he'd like to see 4 or less, that water would stay inside that pipe before it would turn completely over. So that's where those numbers on that slide came from. Now, I've said before, you know, when we, you know, from operating a wastewater facility, you know, I've been involved with wastewater from the regulatory side of things as well as now the operational side of things in 2 separate entities. And when I think of wastewater plants and what they need to be able to operate, I think that it needs to be thought of as community development. And, you know, I know that there's a lot of talk about industrial growth and you need wastewater for industries to land. But for us, the most reliable flow that we can have is residential users, because you get somebody that's, you get a house, somebody builds a house, a subdivision, you're not gonna have a house that sits vacant very long. You're not gonna have houses that typically are gonna cut water out or go to, you know, where we see some industries now that, you know, where they may be permitted and still have a permit with us for 350,000 gallons a day, but they may only be using 60,000 gallons a day because they found ways to reuse water. They found a way to recycle it. They found a way to eliminate it for certain uses. So the commercial would be there after residential, and then lastly, I guess the most unreliable, if you will, would be for industrial, because you build to an industrial user, you may get an industry that uses 1 million gallons a day or discharges 1 million gallons a day of wastewater, or you may get an industry that comes in and it's assembly, and all they do is have restrooms, and they're not generating any wastewater. So that's where, you know, we say about the whole focus with community development when it comes to wastewater. It's hard to design a system, you know, with that in mind, because that potential industrial flow, I mean, it could be anywhere. You just can't really plan for it unless it's for an existing system that you're gonna reroute and take off of one system and take it somewhere else with that flow. Yes, sir.
Did y'all have any success in getting back any permitted capacity? Like, you know, where somebody may be permitted for 300,000 gallons per day but only use 60,000?
We requested of all the industries that they do that, and that we would buy it back from them at the rate that they purchased that capacity at. And I think all of them realized, I think we had one industry that took us up on it, but it was, I think, 4,000 gallons a day, if I remember correctly. But I think what the industries realized was if they ever needed that capacity back and they had to buy it again at the current rate, it would just be so expensive to do. So what we started doing is was that around 2022, we initiated like an unused capacity fee for them, where if they didn't use 50% of their allocated flow on average for a month's time, they would pay, I can't remember what it was, around $1.40 or $1.50 per 1,000 gallons, I think. So, you know, and I think most all of the facilities of those 19 that I mentioned, 2 of those 19 have zero discharge. They don't discharge anything to us, but we still have to have them permitted because of what they do. But the other 17 of them, I think most of those have hit the 50% at some point in time each year, but not regularly. I think on average, we see the industrial users only use about 30% or so of their permitted allocated capacity. But that's why I believe that would be the case. I don't know that anybody's ever come and told us that, but that is what, in our internal discussions, what makes sense to us. But every one of them been offered it, but we had that one take us up on it, but it was for a very small amount. Yes, sir.
Chris, what's the potential cost to maintain that line until we do get some industrial users down there, and who's covering the cost? Will the cities be footing the bill for it?
We don't know what the cost will be yet, because we don't know exactly what the recommended solution will be. There's actually a study that's underway right now that's been commissioned to identify what will be done, and I believe, I meant to call them today before the meeting and ask where they were with that, but it's, that's still kind of out there. I'm hoping to have something done within the next couple of months. It'll be a final report on it. As far as who pays for that, the cities, by agreement, cannot fund that. So that'll be on the users down on at the interstate.
The Davis Creek Road area, I've had some complaints, I know Gwen's had some calls about the smell. What's the issue there and what's causing it?
Okay, and Mr. Hardy called me, this was right around Christmas time, I think I spoke with you about it. So when I talked about hydrogen sulfide, that's exactly what I'm talking about, is you'll get that same, that's what it is those complaints you're getting from over there. So the residents, and this isn't anything new, this has been going on for as long as my wife has been teaching at Ravenel Elementary, which has been since 1998. She has told me about the odors from those pump stations over in that area. But, so what we've done, we've been working, was it over the last maybe year or so, Bob?
Yeah,
Yes.
please, yeah.
We've been working with Seneca Light and Water, and Seneca, they had a study done, and we've got our own issues in other parts of the system, so we're doing the same thing. We're not asking them to do something we're not willing to do ourselves, and we're not, with this system down here, that Seneca had the study done. They were already using a bleach. Sodium hypochlorite was being introduced into one, if not two of your pump stations. I think 2 pump stations. And I think it was, we have gauges out. We go pull it. They're not real time. They're not, they don't go through cell. We have to go and pull a card and download the data. And the indications we've been receiving over the last 2 months have been really good. The trends have been great, as a matter of fact, when we go and pull it. So we found out back in the fall, the consultant, Garber Engineering Group, is the one that did the study. They said that Seneca was overfeeding their hypochlorite at the pump stations and asked them to reduce it down, because their fear was by them feeding it at the level they were, it was creating a corrosive condition in the pipeline by raising the pH too much that was going to degrade the pipes on the opposite end of what the hydrogen sulfide would do. Hydrogen sulfide will form sulfuric acid inside the pipelines, and the bleach is exactly what it is. So you've got the 2 ends of the pH scale that you're trying to get somewhere in between. So they've adjusted it down. Now it's a matter of fine-tuning their feed to try to get it to where it's eliminating the odor, but not too strong within the system. And we've also gone and placed inserts into the manhole. So because the sewer systems are meant to breathe air in and air out, that now there's a activated charcoal filtration system on these manholes, so that when air is released through them, it's filtered out. So right now we're kind of in the finer tuning part of it, and I expect it may go on for a little while as we try to figure this whole thing out. It's very new to us too, to figure out where that sweet spot is as the temperature of the wastewater changes, the ambient temperature of the air changes, and the number of customers that we would have upstream of it may fluctuate seasonally.
So is it a low flow issue there that's causing the buildup?
I think you've got a combination of some things. You got fats, oils, and grease issue. So that's a fog, is what that acronym is. Fog is a substantial contributor to the generation of it. You have what would you say? I guess seasonally, you would say, like, if it's at Epic, you know, the Epic complex in the summertime or Christmas break, where you have lower users or residents there, it would be less flow. But we seem to have the flow there more than just the summer, or the issues more than just in the summer and more than Christmas break. So, you know, the long time in that force main that it's held in there, it's a fairly long force main before it gets to us, is probably part of the reason that you have. And the rest of it, do you remember, was that addressed in y'all's report that Barbara did for you, Bob? Do you remember?
Yeah, that pretty much covered it. I mean, you know, it is, to your point, could be a flow issue, you know, students in or out, and just time is sitting in that pipe. So it has been a very iterative, you know, task.
Yeah, and you know, I attended a community meeting they had back in October and spoke with them. We have a point of contact that's there. I know you guys have had calls about it. We've had calls about it. Seneca's had calls about it, and they've called Senator Alexander about it. The Department of Environmental Services and DHEC for a number of months has been involved with it. So the information, because we had a meeting back with Amy Tao with DES. How long was that back? Maybe November, I guess. Not that long ago, we met with DHEC folks, and they seem pleased. They know we're not just sitting on it. Not, that we are. We have taken an effort. We've spent money on doing the studies. We're taking the actions that as they've been recommended to us by the expert consultants. And the email we got last week from our point of contact said, basically, it said something like, and I can't exactly quote it, but it said it's been all but non-existent. The odor has been, except for there was one day right around New Year's Eve or New Year's Day that they had an issue. Well, to us, that's a trend in the right direction, because it was hits all the time, multiple times a week. So if we went a couple of weeks with nothing, then that's a positive trend. Now we know, try to figure out what was different that one day. Did the chemical feed run out, or trying to troubleshoot. There's no easy fix to it, but we are giving our best effort, and I say we as speaking on their behalf as well. In this case, we really are working hard on it. It's not something we're just pushing to the side.
And to that point, Chris made a good point. It's easy in what we do. Those of us that are in that, we tend to be in a bubble, working on it, and sometimes people don't know that we're working on it. So Chris is, kudos for making sure that we reach out to communicate, to let people know that we are. But I think with that, the subdivision's been very pleased so far.
They seem to have been.
Yeah, I think it's just a communication, knowing that we're not ignoring them, and we're not. Any other questions? Chris, you've done a good job. We'll give you a hand.
Again, I'll put this on our website tomorrow. Just scroll down to the bottom and you'll see annual members meeting presentation. Just click on that and we'll give you a PDF.
All right, very good. Well, we've got some things on the agenda there with our upcoming meeting, and we've already talked about that. So we'll just go ahead and adjourn and, hang around fellowship if you like. If not, thanks for coming out.